Hello everyone, Faris Shivani from Kima Coffee. Thank you for joining. So I'm here today to talk to you about Yemenia. Yemenia, as many of you will know now, is the name of a new genetic group that was discovered in Yemen. I myself and the entire Kima team we've been taken aback and humbled by the positive responses that we've seen throughout the coffee community, and for that we are extremely grateful. And naturally, as is the case with any new thing, we've also had some questions. One such set of questions have been from Willem Boot of Boot Coffee.
Hi, I'm Willem Boots.
So Willem put out some questions on a video. I know Willem Boot. We worked together in the beginning of my coffee journey. I know him relatively well. And I am surprised that these questions were not presented to us for our answers, and that they were just put out. I think it would have made for a much more interesting discussion, much more engaging and productive discussion. But anyway, the questions were asked. They were asked from us or at us, and so I'm here today to answer the questions.
The proclaimed discovery of this Yemenia variety.
Let me stop you there. Important point. Yemenia, not Yemenia, is a genetic group. It is not a variety, right? Really important point. Yemenia is a genetic group. Varieties sit within genetic groups, right? So, let's call things by their correct names. Yemenia is a genetic group.
First, many of the farmers who quite suddenly now are proclaimed as producers of Yemenia, they have been growers and producers of Yemen's prolific coffee variety called Udaini.
First of all, what is Udaini? I think the question is a bit confusing and confused. So Udaini, first and foremost, is not a variety, right? It is a categorization. It is a local name that farmers use in Yemen to categorize trees, right? To describe trees. And Udaini is one name from many names that are used in Yemen. There is Udaini, there's Jufaini, Sa'di, Ja'di, Khawlani, Mahwiti, Haymi, Dawairi, Tufahi, Hawari, and on and on and on. There are many. And these are based on, the names have roots in geographies sometimes. Geographies like Udaini refers to a region in Ib, in south central Yemen, right? Or they could be relating to the look of the tree, the phenotype of the tree. So Dawairi, for example, Dawairi refers to the shape of the cherries. Dawairi means circular in Arabic. So a tree that has circular looking cherries will be called a Dawairi tree. So again, these are names that are used by farmers in Yemen to describe their trees, right? And they're typically approximations. If you ask most farmers, what are the trees that you have? They'll say, I think it's X or Y. But they have no basis in genetics. There is no genetic reality linked to these names. How do we know this? First of all, from our own work, we analyzed hundreds of samples. First of all, we would take a group of trees that were categorized by farmers as Udaini. And within that very same group, we would find genetics from the Yemenia, genetics from the typical Bourbon group, and genetics from the SLs. In the very same set of Udaini categorized trees. And similarly, we would also find in other groups, other names, local names, like Jufaini, like Ja'di, and others, we would find Yemenia groups, Yemenia genetics, we would find SL genetics, and we would find typical Bourbon genetics, right? So again, and I have to reiterate this because I think it's a bit confused. There is no relationship between the names that are used locally by farmers and the genetic identities of those trees. Really important point. And if you don't want to believe us, for whatever reason, right, then we are not the first to discover this. In 2017, there is a paper by Hussein et al. That talks about the very same observation that was made in Yemen. The lack of correlation between the local naming of trees and genetics. And if you think that maybe that's not even enough to convince you yet, this is a global phenomenon, Willem. If you look at the paper Pruvo et al. 2020, this paper talks about the general global observation in the coffee industry in which you find a difference, a lack of correlation between the names, between what farmers categorize their trees as and the genetic reality.
How come that these producers from one year to the next suddenly are producers of a different variety? I don't get that.
Well, as we explained, we took samples, and so in this example, we took the coffees from these farmers that you're referring to, and we did genetic fingerprinting of them, and we found that their coffees were of the Yemenia genetic group. Similarly, Willem, and I'm not sure if you didn't see it or chose not to see it, I'm not sure, there are also farmers on that very same auction that whose coffee last year was sold as Udaini, and this year it's SL28. Isn't that strange also? Didn't that raise the same questions? Right? Akram Darwish, in fact. Huh? So again, and it's driving the point home, there is no relationship. Last year's coffee farmers that we were working with, they categorized their coffees as Udaini. So we categorize them as Udaini. This year we have science and knowledge at our fingertips. So we use that to increase the traceability of the coffees that we offer, and we discovered that the genetic realities and identities of those coffees were, as we have described, Yemenia, typical Bourbon, and SLs. And as we are bound and committed to traceability, we are bound and committed to sharing the correct and real information behind those coffees. And that's why the names have so magically changed from last year until this year.
By chance, I also find out that Kima recently filed a trademark application for the brand Yemenia.
First and foremost, the trademarking of Yemenia by Kima Coffee is no secret, right? You're not uncovering something hidden here. Trademarking is publicly available information. And it would be very silly, secret to have for us to take Yemenia, publicize it to the world, promote it to no end, and then register a publicly available and accessible trademark and not want people to come across it. That wouldn't make sense. And our partners know about the trademarking, our friends know about the trademarking, the Yemen government knows about the trademarking, so there's nothing new here.
It appears as if that process of scientific research was co-opted for other ulterior motives.
What is this suspicious trademark that Kima is doing? Well, what's behind this seemingly suspicious vehicle? Huh? Are they trying to claim something for themselves? I think that's the line of argument here. That's the question, I should say here. So, first and foremost, anyone who has worked with Kima Coffee since our inception, all of our partners, all of our friends, all of our clients, all of our farmers, they know that we were established and we exist and we live and we work with the fundamental and sole purpose of restoring Yemen's coffee industry and supporting the coffee farmers of Yemen. That is why we exist. That's why we're here. And we've been working tirelessly with them. We have been working non-stop in a country that is seemingly impossible to operate in, against seemingly impossible odds. In a country that's been perceived by the coffee industry as a relic of the past, something to be romanticized, something to be viewed with mystique, right? But not something to be taken seriously in the specialty coffee industry. And we've been working against the odds, and we have risked everything with them. And when I say we, I mean me and my team and the people involved in bringing Kima to life. And whilst we don't write a book about it, we have gone through a great deal to be where we are today. And we are there. We are at the cusp of this revolution for Yemen's coffee industry. We are there. We have made this beautiful, this incredible discovery that can change the fate of Yemen. It can change the fate of Yemen's coffee industry. It can change the fortune of the country, of this very misfortunate country. And that can potentially change the fortunes of coffee farmers across the world. And we are terrified, I'll be honest. I am terrified. And I'm terrified that in the years that it took us to build Yemen's reputation, it could take days or weeks to destroy everything.
What is their plan? Are they trying to monopolizing the celebration of this new variety for their own economic benefits?
The biggest risk, the biggest threat facing Yemen's coffee industry, facing the success of Yemen's coffee industry, is the very same thing that almost destroyed Yemen's coffee industry, which is the lack of traceability around Yemeni coffee and the inaccessibility of Yemen as a country. Willem, you yourself cannot go to Yemen. You cannot visit a Yemeni coffee farm. And that is an issue. And it is common knowledge. It is common knowledge that the Yemeni coffee is frequently adulterated. That Yemeni coffee is sold as Yemeni coffee when sometimes it's not even from Yemen. And so when it comes to Yemenia, the biggest threat facing Yemenia is the adulteration of Yemenia.
I'm puzzled by this trademark.
And so we are putting in protocols in place. And it is a suite of protocols, a set of protocols and tools. And trademarking is one such tool, and it is not enough. And these protocols will ensure the traceability and verification of Yemenia such that it is not adulterated. And if it is adulterated, it can destroy the value within Yemenia, which will ultimately destroy the value for the farmers. And these protocols will be available and accessible to all, with no exception.
And it makes me wonder about the intentions behind this scheme.
And I hear in your video that you seem to be conscious, you seem to be concerned for Yemen's coffee industry. Well, I can reassure you that we are working directly on these protocols with the Yemeni Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation.
Hopefully, the coffee media can investigate this issue soon.
I am left with a sense, with a feeling of disappointment, if I'm honest. And I'm disappointed because, first of all, we know each other. And these questions were not presented to me or to us. We were not asked these questions. We were not given the courtesy of responding. But I'm also disappointed, I'm even more disappointed, in fact, that they were published on the eve of our auction. On the eve of the biggest annual celebration that we have for the Yemeni coffee industry and for Yemen's smallholder coffee farmers. And I hope you realize, Willem, that ultimately any negative impact that resulted from your video would go on to Yemen's smallholder farmers. That you would be impacting Yemen's smallholder farmers in what is a war-torn country, in home to the world's worst humanitarian crisis. And if there were serious concerns, and they are serious indeed, the questions that you raised, why were they not presented to us? And in fact, I'm left wondering, what were the true intentions or drivers behind you releasing this video? Was it purely driven by a concern and a care for Yemen and Yemen's coffee farmers that you talk about? Or was it something else? Is there something commercial? Right? This is a question that I'm wondering. It's left occupying my mind. And so I hope you will allow me to ask you my own set of questions. And the first and most obvious question is, I am aware that you are the auction manager of the Port of Mocha 2020 auction, the upcoming auction in a month or two. What exactly is your role in that auction? And by harming Kimma's auction, would there be any potential benefit to the auction of Port of Mocha, and by extension to you as the auction manager? And in fact, whilst I'm thinking of you and your role in Yemen, I am left really wondering, how much experience do you have in Yemen? I hear you talk about the prolific Udaini variety, which you miscategorize. I am aware of the papers that you co-authored. In fact, I read one of them and it was interesting. But how much do you really know about Yemen and Yemeni coffee on the ground? For example, how many coffee farms have you visited in Yemen? Any? One? Two? None at all? How many regions have you visited? How many regions or villages or governorates have you been in Yemen? Because I think it's important for people to know two things. It's important for people who are watching this video and your video to know if there are any potential conflicts of interest between the questions that you raise and the drivers behind raising those questions. And number two, to know the level of experience, of genuine experience on the ground and theoretical experience that you have about Yemen's coffee industry, because they are critical for anyone to objectively analyze and understand this discussion in a fair and transparent way. And I guess I'll close with a message of responsibility and maturity. You talk about setting precedent for the coffee industry.
Because it sets an important precedent for the coffee industry.
I think it's really important that we all set precedent in how we raise questions and concerns, critical questions and concerns, however critical they may be, in a way that does not impact the people that we are apparently all trying to serve, the coffee farmers, right? And knowing you, and with our pre-existing relationship, I would have genuinely and honestly hoped that this was not the approach that would be adopted to raise such concerns. Thank you very much.